Welcome to the IJIS Institute Sounds of Safety podcast, where our community will be delving into a series of critical issues supporting the public sector mission space. In this episode, we're continuing a series focused on malware from the IJIS Institute's Cybersecurity Working Group and their JusticeGuardian series. This time, the group dives into the topic of cyber threat actors, the people who are behind the creation and distribution of malware. We once again welcome back host Larry Zorio, chair of the Cybersecurity Working Group, along with returning member Jeramy Cooper-Leavitt. Together, they discuss what motivates threat actors, why they are using malware, what they gain from it, and more. So let's jump into the conversation with Larry and Jeramy and understand who these threat actors are and what they do to spread malware.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of IJIS Institute's Sound of Safety Cybersecurity Corner. This is Larry Zorio. I'm here with Jeramy Cooper-Leavitt. Today's episode is Who's Behind Malware? Understanding Cyber Threat Actors. So this is the second episode in our series around malware, and today's focus is going to be on threat actors. What motivates them? Why are they using malware? What are they getting out of it? And we're going to try to cover that in a very succinct manner today. So let's just jump into it, Jeramy, and let's just start with the different types of threat actors that are out there. And let's kind of go down the list. Maybe we can come up with like a top 5 list of threat actors. Who's the first one that comes to mind? And then let's talk about like their motivations and some of the tactics they use and what have you.
Yeah, I think the first one is hostile foreign governments. We could name them off if we wanted to, but they're probing. They're looking for holes. They probably already found them, and that's why we're starting to see more attacks already happening. But they're going after the critical infrastructure. It's a probing attack that's being planned, and it's underway now. Okay,
so is another term for that, like, I think we're saying the same thing. Like, I call it nation state actors. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, a government who's actually backing these attacks. There have been governments in the past that have been exposed that literally have a office building, a tower in a very popular city, and that whole tower is dedicated to hacking foreign nations. It is a bunch of government workers. They're all hackers. They're sitting in this building, and they are assigned a couple U.S.-based companies or a couple U.S.-based public organizations. Could even be a police organization or a state-level run organization, and their only job is to hack them. And they get compensated if they're successful. They get bonuses if they're successful. So this happens very, very regularly. Just a little bit more on what would be some of the reasons that would motivate a foreign nation state to be doing this, Jeramy?
I think a lot of it could be ideological. Like, could be that they may not like the way our government runs or the way our current administration is doing things. So we saw with the advent of the Ukraine and Russian war, we saw a lot of attacks precipitating on both countries. So that could happen as well. Ideological could also be maybe someone who is environmentalist and they're looking at, we don't like the way this company or this organization treats the environment, and so we're going to take it down. So they're not after money. They're just ideologically trying to take something down.
Okay. All right. So first one, nation state actors. Second one that comes to mind for me would be, I'm just going to call it like a cyber criminal gang. All right. So this is a group of individuals. They are kind of like a professional hacking crew. This group, and they don't have to be from the same city or anything. It's just this group of hackers online that are sophisticated, and they decide, you know what, we're going to team up together and we are going to try to attack different companies. And cyber criminals, typically their motivation is money. These groups are put together because they want to try to make money. It could be through ransomware, like for our audience, right? Like a ransomware group encrypts a sheriff's office CAD system and they demand that you're not going to be able to dispatch anymore unless you pay us $200,000 in Bitcoin, right? That is typically a cyber criminal gang that gets put together, and that's what they do there. What would be another example?
Another one we've heard a lot is insider threats. So people
Mm.
within the company, they're mad that they're about to get laid off or their friends got laid off and they have some background. Like, this stuff is not that hard to get your hands on now. There's malware makers, like wizards that put everything together for you. They went out and did some research and they figured out what to do and they just launched it internally in the company to start taking things down. So insider threat is also a big one. And we've heard that term a lot, insider threat, for stealing company data. And they can also take the company down because they're mad at the company. And a lot of times when you have key positions in a company, like maybe someone with a high level access to main admin access or access to a lot of financial information, or and they say that they're going to quit the company, a lot of times people will just turn off their accounts immediately to protect from anything like that happening. They don't let them go back to their desks to get files off their computer. They just take the access away and turn it off immediately to stop this from happening. But insider threat is a real thing.
It really, it really is a real thing, right? It could be that they're ticked off. It could also be that maybe they are being forced to. We've heard stories of individuals who maybe have a bad gambling debt, or maybe there's something going on that shouldn't be in their home life, and this hacking group finds out about it, and they say, you're either going to do this for us or we're going to expose you. You're either going to pay back your gambling debt of $100,000 or you're going to plant this USB stick in your company for us. So there's all different types of motivations around insider risk. The fourth one that comes to mind for me is one that you touched on a little bit at the beginning, but I want to call it out as being a bit separate, is hacktivists. So these aren't activists, they're hacktivists. So if you think about activists, protesters in a city, and they're trying to make a stance on something, they're standing in front of the state house with picket signs, that's typically activists. But a hacktivist uses hacking to do the same thing. I've heard stories of organizations like PETA who go after companies that are cruel to animals. And those are typically the activist side of it. But then there are some rogue hacktivists that believe in a lot of the values of PETA that will go after these companies and they'll hack them. So motivations would be revenge. You mentioned the ideology, and there is a bit of financial gain in there. So that one could be some of the typical attacks we talk about, whether it's the malware, but also you see a lot here of just bringing systems down, like a DDoS attack, a denial of service attack. These hacktivists will just flood the network of a company and just try to bring it down because they don't want it to be in business anymore. So that's another example. So just to recap, so far we've talked about nation states, we've talked about criminal gangs, we've talked about insider threats, we've talked about hacktivists, which gets to our next topic, just how easy it is now, Jeramy, to go and get some malware and learn how to hack. There are actual services like a SaaS model, a software as a service model that you can subscribe to if you want to become a hacker tomorrow. If you want to become a cyber criminal, if you want to become a script kiddie, if you want to just start tomorrow on the dark web, there's plenty of these models that will walk you step by step through whatever you want to do, which is very, very interesting. It's almost like we hear a lot about the black market, right? You're buying a weapon on the black market or something like that, but you can do the same thing on the dark web now with these software packages. It's pretty amazing. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think these companies also recruit people in different countries for in-country attacks because they're easier to get their attack vector on, because sometimes we do a lot of geo-blocking where we don't allow attacks in from different countries. But I think we covered that one pretty good. Service model, it's very unique. It's been building over the last decade and they've gotten very good at it. And they're making money with it and they're very well organized. I wish they would use their talents for good, but they're using them for bad right now.
Yeah, they are. Let's bring it back to the audience. So we covered some of these different types of attackers, nation state, script kiddies, cyber criminals, all these different ones. And the audience, I don't know, they may or may not be thinking, oh, this isn't going to happen to me, right? What could happen to me? So what does it mean to our audience if this were to happen, how they should be thinking about this? Just any general points around that.
Yeah, I think you said the first thing. It's, this isn't going to happen to me. I'm too small. A
Mm,
lot of companies say that, but I think people are looking for targets of opportunity so they can use and practice their digital weapons, their digital malware, their digital attacks. So they could be scrolling through the internet and combing for news articles that said, hey, this county lost half its funding, and some of it was IT related. And like,
mhm.
okay, wow, this would be a good target of opportunity now. So I think it's important that organizations, companies, they don't let off too much information of if funding was cut. They don't talk about, hey, we lost funding, we can't put in any new firewalls, because you just let everybody know you're a target. And so I think that as part of public safety is you're not too small to be a target. So be careful what information you put out there about your organization.
Yeah, another thing I would think about too, first off, your point was so well stated, right? It can happen to anybody. It's not if, but when. I'm sure you've heard that before. It sounds like a broken record, but it really is that. It will happen. If you have not been attacked before, in a way, you're lucky because we mentioned some of these well funded organizations. Once they zero in on you, it's very, very difficult. So you are not too small. You're not too big. Your budget is not too small, not too big, although I think probably the small side is like hopefully you can fight for some budget because you do need the basic blocking and tackling to hopefully prevent some of this. But I think another thing to think about is that attackers are thinking about is the impact it's going to have. So when you're looking at your organization, think about if you were an attacker, where you would try to attack. Where would the most impact be? We talk a lot about public safety, right? I think the 911 system would be a huge impact. I think your CAD system, your dispatch system would be a huge impact. Certainly in healthcare, it would be like your medical record system would be a big, big impact. If you're running a jail, your system that actually runs it would be big impact. So those are the things that attackers are thinking about. To Jeramy's point, you might, oh, well, I'm small. It's not going to happen to me. But you can be small and still have very big impact. You can be a financial institution of 3 people, but you're managing a couple $1 billion in assets, right? It doesn't matter how big or small you are. You have to really think about the impact. Let's just talk a little bit more about defenses. I know at the end of these episodes, we typically like to just talk about like some controls that you can put in place, Jeramy. We've talked about malware. We did talk about on our first episode a little bit on how you can protect yourself. We're going to do a whole episode on that. But knowing that we've now talked about threat actors, is there anything that you can do on your side to protect your environment, knowing these different types of threat actors and maybe put a few controls in place?
Yeah, I think there are companies out there that help with threat intelligence. So if you use them, they do a good job with, if you upload the type of assets that you use, they can give you good information on, hey, these are the attack vectors available that are going to come after you today because you're using this version of a firewall or this version of software on your desktops, or maybe you're still on Windows 10.
Mm.
So there is news that can be correlated together for you, and you can keep up with what do I need to do to protect myself, because they could be targeting you. And threat intel is important, and you could see who's talking about you on the internet. The other thing we've talked about before, there is software that can stop this stuff dead in its tracks when it sees it happen. There's very good vendors out there. A vendor name also out there that we've all heard about is CrowdStrike. I think they're great. They're important to use, and I'm sure we'll talk more about those types of things. But there are vendors out there that can stop this stuff dead in its tracks. That so much testing and research has gone into on the good guy side of the house
Yeah.
that are trying to protect this critical infrastructure from malware.
Well, hopefully the audience does have some of these. If they don't, please tune in to a future episode where we will go into a lot more depth on the different types of tools and tactics that you can do to prevent these from happening to you. So let's go ahead and wrap up this episode. So what we covered today was the 5 major types of threat actors and really kind of their motives. We talked about each one of these threat actors kind of has different tactics. Like they might use malware, they might do DDoS attacks, there might be USBs in the parking lot. But hopefully this is starting to give you a sense of malware and why people are using it and the opportunities that are there and how easy it is. But it's really important that you subscribe and follow this channel because there are going to be 3 more episodes, if not more, on this topic. We also cover other topics. We are going to cover AI. It is a hot button and we are going to cover it. So I'm just going to tease that for the future as well. We cover IJIS, we cover cloud native, we cover all different topics on IJIS Institute's Sound of Safety podcast. So until next time, thanks for listening, everybody, and we will talk soon.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Sounds of Safety podcast. Be sure to stay connected with the IJIS Institute on LinkedIn and X, and don't forget to subscribe on Apple Music, Spotify, or your preferred podcast platform to catch future episodes. From cybersecurity to artificial intelligence and deep dives into critical national data sharing initiatives, the Sounds of Safety podcast has you covered. Until next time.